Welcome back to the Complete Aviation Solutions Deep Dive. This is number 1007. Today, we're really digging into some, well, pretty significant developments happening right now across the global aviation industry. We've sifted through the latest reports, pulled out the key insights, some surprising facts, too, really just to help you understand the bigger picture of what's going on out there. We're going to cover quite a range. A Canadian carrier making this unprecedented jump internationally, a major airline getting some absolutely critical funding, and another carrier that's, streamlining its whole fleet for maybe some long-term stability.
Yeah, and what's quite striking is how these news items, they might seem pretty separate on the surface, right? But they're actually deeply interconnected. They paint a really vivid picture of the current landscape. It shows not just the immediate hurdles, but also where the opportunities might be, and crucially, how airlines are, adapting almost in real time. We'll look at what these stories tell us about the broader state of aviation and what it means going forward.
Okay, sounds good. Let's dive into our first story then. We're kicking things off with some pretty exciting news out of Canada about a scheduled carrier there making its first ever move beyond Canada and the U.S. I mean, this is a really significant step for a company that's mostly focused on domestic and trans-border routes until now. They've just announced 5 brand new international spots they'll be flying to. It really marks a shift. So starting this winter, you'll see them heading to Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, Nassau International, Grand Cayman Island, and Guanacaste. And these aren't just like token routes. They're seriously expanding into popular leisure markets. For Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, and Nassau, the flights will leave from Toronto Pearson, Ottawa International, and Hamilton, Ontario. And then Grand Cayman and Guanacaste will be served out of Toronto and Ottawa. Get your calendars ready because they're set to start between November 5th and December 19th, 2025.
Right. And what's really strategic here, I think, isn't just where they're going, it's how. They're using their E195 E2 fleet for all of these routes.
The newer jets.
Exactly. Modern, fuel-efficient regional jets. It's a smart choice for these specific routes. The range, the capacity it fits. It means, a decent passenger experience, but also helps manage the costs. And maybe even more critical, the schedules. They've been set up very carefully to mesh perfectly with another major airline's flights in the region.
Okay, so not just going it alone.
No, not at all. It's actually part of a joint venture agreement that points to a really smart, collaborative way to enter these markets. It's about leveraging existing networks, sharing the risk, maximizing the reach.
Makes sense. So thinking about the traveler, how big a deal is this expansion really? Does it genuinely shake things up competition-wise in these vacation spots?
Yeah.
Or is it maybe more about offering like extra convenience or tapping into slightly different customer groups?
That's a really good question. I mean, more choice is always good for us as passengers, right?
Yeah.
But the bigger impact might be that strategic coordination you mentioned. Because it's a joint venture, they're not just adding their flights, they're effectively plugging into and extending a much larger network.
Okay.
So that could mean not just more direct options, but potentially better pricing because of the extra capacity and, integrated booking systems. And for the airline itself, using those E195 E2s signals a clear move into potentially more profitable international leisure flying. It helps them diversify beyond their existing fleet. What is it, 29 DHE-8 Q400s?
As a turboprops.
Right, better suited for shorter hops. And they already have 44 of the E195 E2, so this expands that part of the operation. It's definitely a calculated evolution for them.
Okay, so from that kind of bold expansion, let's shift gears completely. We'll look at a different side of the aviation story, one that really underlines how tough recovery can be in this business. We're moving over to Asia, specifically to a major scheduled carrier based in Jakarta. They've just managed to secure a pretty substantial financial lifeline. A recent stock exchange filing shows they've got a $405 million shareholder loan from Danantara, which is a sovereign wealth fund, and it's quite specific how that money's being split. Most of it, $295.3 million, is actually going to its subsidiary. The rest, about $109.7 million, is for overhauling the parent airline itself. It feels like more than just a top-up, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The filing actually uses the phrase, maintain the continuity of the business. That tells you a lot.
Survival mode, basically.
Pretty much. This isn't about expansion right now. It's fundamental. Even after that major restructuring back in 2022, which, remember, cut debt massively, downsized the fleet, the network, everything, they've still been facing, and I'm quoting here, obstacles to recovery.
Wow, even after restructuring, what kind of obstacles?
Well, big ones. They've had negative equity for the last 3 years straight. That means liabilities are way higher than assets, just not sustainable. And maybe the most critical piece, a huge ongoing aircraft maintenance backlog.
That sounds serious.
It is. The numbers are pretty stark. For the parent airline, 21 out of 79 planes are out of service. For the subsidiary, it's 31 out of 59.
Good grief, that's a lot of grounded planes.
It's massive. And you can imagine the impact on revenue, right? It's so bad they apparently can't even cover non-operational costs. Things like, paying the lease for planes just sitting there or paying interest on loans. The fixed costs are just eating them alive.
That's a tough spot.
Yeah.
But okay, despite all that, the CEO seems to have a plan. They're framing this loan not just as a stopgap, but as part of a bigger transformation. The plan is apparently to grow the group's fleet by 20% over 5 years. But hang on. A big part of that growth is just getting the grounded planes back in the air. Is that actually doable with that maintenance backlog? Seems optimistic.
It is ambitious, no doubt. The execution is everything here. But what's interesting is the sovereign wealth fund's role. Dan and Tara isn't just handing over cash. Their COO specifically said they'd oversee every stage of the process with periodic evaluations based on clear performance indicators and accountability.
So strings attached. Very tight strings.
Exactly. This isn't a blank check, it's a strategic investment, and you can bet there will be intense oversight. It shows how important this airline is considered, probably for national infrastructure too. That pressure might be what's needed to push through the maintenance issues.
It really does highlight how deep these problems can run, doesn't it? Even post-restructuring, things like maintenance can just cripple you. And it shows the role state-backed money sometimes has to play. Okay, so speaking of different strategies, let's move again. Our next story takes us to Southern Africa, to a carrier taking a very different path towards stability. Much more focused. We're looking at a scheduled carrier in Antananarivo. They're zeroing in on fleet simplification and really trying to nail down domestic reliability. So no big international splash here, just getting the fundamentals right at home. They've just announced they're extending leases with a lessor for 2 of their ATR-72 aircraft. To be specific, one ATR-72-500 lease runs until January 2028 and an ATR-72-600 until November 2029. And the ages are interesting. The Niga 500 is nearly 23 years old. The Niga 600 is just over 10. That difference probably plays into their strategy. Right now, the whole fleet is 9 planes. 5 of those older ATR-72-500s, the one ATR-72-600, and 3 DHE-6-300s. And only 5 turboprops are actually flying.
Yeah, and this fits right into their core turnaround plan, which they're calling Phoenix 2030. It's all about standardizing the fleet. The goal is pretty clear. Operate just 6 ATR-72s by 2026, then 7 by 2027. And the ultimate aim, make the ATR-72-600 their only aircraft type.
One single type. That makes sense for efficiency.
Huge sense. Think about maintenance, spare parts, pilot training. It simplifies everything dramatically. And that strategy also explains what they're doing with those 3 grounded DHC-6-300 Twin Otters.
Right, the ones not flying.
They've basically decided it's too expensive to get them back in the air, probably maintenance costs, maybe parts for the older models, so they're going to sell them off. It's a pretty pragmatic decision, get rid of assets that aren't pulling their weight. And this whole transformation isn't just happening on its own. There's significant backing from the World Bank.
Okay. Financial support.
Yes, a support package. They've already got $25 million of it. And they're waiting on a final decision for a second chunk, another $40 million, from a total package of $65 million. That external funding is obviously key to making this fleet overhaul actually happen.
And despite the current situation, there's actually some optimism, which is always nice to hear.
Yeah.
They're apparently hoping for a modest profit in 2025. So this really focused approach, simplify the fleet, nail the domestic routes, does this offer a kind of template for smaller airlines trying to find their feet? What's the takeaway?
I think the big lesson here is the power focus and maybe ruthless efficiency. For smaller carriers trying to be everything to everyone or juggling a mixed aging fleet, it can just sink you.
Yeah.
This Phoenix 2030 plan shows that by concentrating on one reliable, modern-ish type like the ATR-72-600, you can get those crucial economies of scale. Maintenance, training, scheduling, it all gets easier.
Right.
And it also highlights that getting support from someone like the World Bank isn't just about the cash. It often forces you into making these tough but necessary operational reforms. It's really about building a solid, sustainable foundation first, instead of, chasing expansion before you're ready.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So today we've really covered the spectrum, haven't we? From that big Canadian international push to the critical financial rescue in Jakarta, and then this really focused fleet strategy in Antananarivo. Each one gives you a different angle on the pressures and opportunities in global aviation right now.
Absolutely. And if you sort of connect the dots between them, a pattern really does emerge, I think. The industry right now is all about proactive adaptation. It has to be. Whether that means launching bold new routes, needing essential financial help from state backed funds, or that really disciplined streamlining, like simplifying the fleet, airlines are constantly adjusting, innovating, trying to find the path forward. It shows a lot of resilience, actually.
It really does. It makes you think about how these individual airline moves reflect those broader trends. Resilience, yes, efficiency, adaptation in this constantly changing global aviation picture. It's a good reminder that even in such a complex industry, focused strategies, smart partnerships, and just a clear eye on operational health can really make a difference. Well, thank you for joining us on Complete Aviation Solutions Deep Dive number 107.